This story will cover from then to now and next, all about change, how to turn losers into winners. There is a bird that can soar over the highest, wildest mountains of Europe. Its food may be in the deep freeze, not available until the snow melts in the spring in the Pyrenees, the Alps and Crete. These are some of the very few places it still survives today. But can that continue? It's the bearded vulture, for obvious reasons. Also the lammergeier, which means lamb vulture. Not a good label if you live in a place like the Greek island of Crete, where sheep are a way of life, and have been in the past, from which these pictures are taken. Our story will update its fortunes, past and present, with a look to the future. Is it a winner or a loser? It certainly would seem big enough to survive with a wingspan of nearly 3 meters. 9 feet, well over the length of a man. A traditional home for sheep, supervised by a dog of course. Sheep cheese, local bread, but that's not what a lammergeier is looking for. That's something very different. Though it does involve his earthbound neighbours, rather they contain what he's looking for. Goats have changed the landscape of Crete, now taking to the trees. The original wild goat was food for the lammergeier. Surprisingly perhaps, it's the hard parts that's the attraction, and inside as well. So wherever there are goats and sheep, the lammergeier will be searching with those amazing eyes, plus impressive wingspan and distinctive diamond-shaped tail. When you think about it, there are lots of bones out there. Now in the Pyrenees in Spain, the lammergeier follows the bells, hoping for a dead owner or the remains of one. And at last, the red ring works wonders. The bearded one is about to get a well-earned meal. Bones. He has a special technique. This is a rare sight, classic footage of a very rare bird in Europe, and he's also known as the bone breaker, and often uses the same spot. It's the only European raptor that regularly feeds on bones and bone marrow, which can make up more than 80% of its diet. They are even known to drop tortoises, which is a bit of a surprise if you're passing below. This past footage will be brought up to date to show whether this majestic bird is winning or losing in its remote mountain homes. It's part of a food network involving the original wild goat and also wolves. Like all birds of prey, wolves have been persecuted right across Europe in the past. Shooting, trapping, poisoning took place where birds and wolves knew no national boundaries and little peace, often because of undeserved reputations. Illegal poisoning kills foxes, wolves and vultures, all part of a healthy ecosystem, of which the lammergeier takes part of the bones and helps reduce the spread of disease. There is competition in all this from golden eagles, apparently saturating the Alps. Some good news, though competition for nest sites may be a problem. And feeding on shot animals like deer may mean being poisoned by lead. Now a highly ambitious project has been introducing lammergeiers from their strongholds in the Pyrenees, France and Spain to the Alps and captive breeding them. There are some 600 pairs in Europe and it has been considered vulnerable. It was hunted to extinction in the Alps 100 years ago, so this international effort has attracted much interest from the press and the public. Though not everyone's idea of a cuddly bird, people prefer penguins or parrots, but this vulture is really special. Just looking at them, it's impossible to tell the sexes apart, but blood and DNA tests solved that. In 1986, the first young ones were released in the Swiss Alps at Hohe-Tauern, and more later into Haute-Savoie in France. More juveniles were reared and later introduced into Switzerland's Engadina National Park and France's Mercantour National Park for the Alps. A truly international effort, appropriate for a bird that can fly across several countries in a few hours. All individually known, name, sex, date of birth, location, a sort of vulture passport for an intrepid traveller, but carefully reared in privacy until the big day. Below a high alpine peak, a crowd and many press have gathered, addressed by none other than the Aga Khan, drawing attention to a very special event. He explained Alp Action's plan.
Qui fait que Alp Action travaille avec
et puis merci à l'école de Saint-Martin Jules Ferry et merci à celle de Saint-Martin.
Aussi, le casseur d'os est un vautour. Il se nourrit d'os qu'il trouve sur des animaux morts dans les avalanches ou suite à un accident ou à une maladie.
As a member of the older generation, he's keen to ensure young people get a different view of predators than was the case in the past with all that hunting and trapping and poisoning.
qui ont participé à la réintroduction du gypaète, avec un panneau.
And now for the stars of the show. The young ones are dark. Young people seem to warm to them. It's a vulture press conference. rather terrifying compared with the usual life in the cage, fed and watered. And it's the most action the normally placid locals have ever seen.
Regardez avec vos yeux.
On peut faire le coin, s'il vous plaît. Monsieur va dire coin.
Interesting that something, shall we say, so unattractive attracts so much attention and fascination by young and old, press and public alike.
Non pas encore en fait, les sacs vont être déterminés avec les plus de sang. C'est fait hier et ce matin. C'est pas possible. On va les remettre. On les remettre, voilà, bravo aux enfants qui montent jusque là et les oiseaux vont bouger avec leur clé là-haut.
In temporary darkness, they'll now be carried to a chosen nest cave and fed there until they're old enough to fly and add to the population already here in the Alps. "34 pairs and 19 chicks fledged in 2015. A really good score. Signs are improving elsewhere in Europe. In Crete, for example, home of the krikri, the wild goat, a symbol like the lamagar, the bearded vulture, apparently the biggest bird in Europe. Supported by a project, Natura 2000. In the Pyrenees, visitors enjoy a visit to a museum in a castle. Not far away you can see one for real from a special viewing platform. You don't need a hide, but binoculars and a telescope do help. With their other cliff-nesting neighbours, like choughs, they take great care of their plumage. From the large flight feathers to the tiny ones that clothe the body, so vital in the winter mountains, or soaring for hours over them. Sometimes they dust bathe to clean out parasites, alongside a wall creeper and a snow finch. They start breeding early in the year, as melting snow may reveal dead animals killed by the cold or by avalanches. The marmots come out of hibernation then. He's looking for a drink. Bones are thirsty work. And your beard gets wet. Truly an icon of Europe's finest landscapes, enjoyed by tourists, supporting livestock and vultures alike. Ecotourism is big business. Wall creepers are worth money. So are adventurers. The scenery, the wildlife. The old and the new. The Lammergeier spans them all, as do the others of his often misunderstood group of cleaners from the skies. We can fly. We can save the Lammergeier. And here's an encouraging sign, an update. A bird's eye view in England over the peat diggings of the Somerset Levels. Then over the flat marshes to the Severn Estuary and its famous bridges. Very unlike the mountains and valleys of the Alps, and not where you'd expect to find a young Lammergeier, very rare appearance in the British countryside. When you're out there with the dog and your ball, you don't expect to see a huge bird like this. And film it on your phone. From the Alps perhaps. Again the press got excited and the bird moved on to Devon, where people could hardly miss it. This is more like Lammergeier country, Dartmoor National Park. It was spotted at a remote lake at the head of one of the rivers. Food on the hoof. Alive. And dead. For a lamb vulture perhaps. And keen birders, or twitchers as they're known, wondered if visitors had had one too many at the famous isolated Warren House Inn. This was the barman.
Well, the lammergeier was first spotted here possibly about 3 weeks ago, and initially there were quite a lot of RSPB people looking for bird watchers, looking probably up to about 40-50 at once, all along the road, all looking over towards Sowson's Forest. And the numbers have dropped gradually since, but there are still people up here on a regular basis trying to spot him if he's about.
Excellent.
And a tour guide.
Well, I was in a coach on a tour, and I looked at the window and saw this huge bird and saw the little feathers and fingers at the end of the wings. So I thought, oh, that's an awfully big one. Went to the Dartmoor Centre afterwards, looked in the bird book, and there wasn't anything that big. But there was a newspaper there talking about a lammergeier, which I'd never seen. And I thought, oh, I bet that was it. And it was just a fleeting glance out of the bus, but I'm pretty sure that was it. Very exciting for me.
So where next? Hopefully to a better future for this great species.